Hi, everybody, and welcome to The Mighty Companions. I'm Reverend Yolanda, singer, songwriter, drag queen, and interfaith minister.
And I'm your host, Reverend Glenn Morton Ganaway, integral mentor.
And together we are
Mighty Companions Ministries,
an edutainment ministry whose purpose is to co-create community that inspires us all to live the calling of Spirit.
With A Course in Miracles as the primary guide, we co-create worship, entertainment, gatherings, lectures, and workshops.
You can find us on the web at www.themightycompanions.com.
And every other Saturday here on Livestream and the Tau Fellowship. We are so happy that you are here. Hi, and welcome to the Mighty Companions. Thank you for choosing to join me today on this beautiful Saturday. I'm coming to you from a recording because Yolanda and I are on tour. So if you're in North Carolina, in the Chapel Hill, Raleigh, Chapel Hill, Carborough area, or you're in Boone, or you're in Chattanooga, Tennessee, you can come see us. If you'd like to know more about where we're going to be this week, you can go over to themightycompanions.com. That's themightycompanions.com. If that's too much to remember, just go to yolanda.net and you'll find all the information there on the Mighty Companions page. I'm half of the Mighty Companions. My name is Reverend Glenn Morton Ganaway, and I'm an integral mentor. So that means that I kind of teach. I'm a teacher that approaches a subject through all different kinds of ways. The integral method is one in which it's a lens we look through the world at, kind of the way the Holy Spirit teaches us to look at the world. So I'd like to, I try to teach and get across these ideas by using our interior, our mind, putting together the thoughts and the ideas for us. I try to give you a felt sense of what these ideas are, the body and the world that we're in, the actual physical feel and taste and sensual nature of these lessons. Also try to provide you with the structure of the Course in Miracles, how it likes to be read, what the voice or our guide Jen tries to do with us, and the structures that the Course in Miracles has, and contrast them with the structures that are in place now. And maybe there's several different spiritual technologies I'll reference, and all as a way of getting us to understand these ideas in yet another way. The last way is the way in which we can apply these ideas in our own relationships, because that's mostly what we are, right? It says God is love. We know God is love. We've heard that probably since we were children in Sunday school or in the synagogue or in the temple with God is love. Well, love is expressed in relationships. Love is a felt sense. Love is more than an idea or a structure. It's us. It's our relationships. It's who we are. And that's kind of the non-dual kind of awareness I think the Course in Miracles is really good at. So I always say the Course in Miracles is probably the best text I know to speak of or bring us to a non-dual awareness in the Western canon, especially for the Western mind, because we're all steeping in these ideas of salvation and temptation and forgiveness. So that's kind of what we'll be doing as we go through the course this year. I'm so happy you've chosen to be a part of this with us, and I'm really looking forward to bringing it to you in this format. We'll be looking at 12.8 pages a week. I say that a lot because I want to get the word out there that you can read the course in a year, and it's best to do it in a group like we're doing here. Maybe you've got some friends with you, but you're going to study it with me. and as I go through it, and maybe study it with some folks in your neck of the woods as well. I'm here in lovely downtown Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, in the southernmost part of Brooklyn, in one of the 5 boroughs of New York City, here in the United States of America. And I'm really, Course in Miracles is my passion, and I'm really glad to be sharing it with you. So if you look at the Course in Miracles, you can read it in 12.8 pages a week, and if you do that, you will find yourself on chapter 7. Actually, we're going to be looking at the second half of chapter 7, the gifts of the kingdom, because we did the first half of the chapter last week. Okay? So, but before we do that, we're going to get into that very quickly. But before we do that, I always want to make sure that we give ourselves permission to approach these ideas in the best way that we can. And the Course in Miracles gives us instructions about how it is supposed to be read, and like how, how it's supposed to be read. I think is the best way to say it. So the Course in Miracles tells us about itself and how we're supposed to use the ideas in the workbook, use the lessons, because there's a lesson a day. There's about 200 lessons, for 365 days. So we'll be looking at those every week. But let's listen to what the Course it says about itself. And this comes from the last 3 paragraphs of the workbook, the introduction to the workbook for students. We'll be using this book, the Course in Miracles, the combined volume. And so I'll be reading from that, and that's kind of the edition I'm going to use. But there's the Sparkle edition and lots of other editions as well. So feel free to follow along as you see fit, or just watch the videos. We have a good time. So this is how the Course asks us to read it, and it's called the Workbook Instructions. The overall aim of the exercises is to increase your ability to extend the ideas you will be practicing to include everything. This will require no effort on your part. The exercises themselves meet the conditions necessary for this kind of transfer. Some of the ideas the workbook contains you will find hard to believe, and the others may seem to be quite startling. This does not matter. You are merely asked to apply the ideas as you are directed to do. You are not asked to judge them. You are asked only to use them. It is their use that will give them meaning to you and will show you that they are true. Remember only this. She says that a lot. Remember only this. You need not believe the ideas. You need not accept them. You need not even welcome them. Some of them you may actively resist. None of this will matter or decrease their efficacy. But do not allow yourselves to make exceptions in applying the ideas the workbook contains. And whatever your reactions to the ideas may be, use them. Nothing more than that is required. So we're off the hook already. We're off the hook. It's okay to disagree. It's okay to have your own reaction. It's okay to have your opinion about it, and find out for yourself. These ideas work. That's why I like them. These ideas are a part of a system, part of what I call a spiritual technology, in order to bring us the experience in a body of non-dual awareness, of being walking around 3-dimensional, holy mind of God. I think that's possible. The Course says it's possible. We've seen many people in the world wake up. And by waking up, that's a really popular term these days. Wake up! To their own nature. You don't wake up from something. In my opinion, and I have lots of them, is we wake up into the knowledge of what has always been. The Course says that when that happens, we'll laugh And that's why we're going to be looking a lot at that as the course moves on, because as I've said a lot, our default setting is joy, and we create by being the presence of love in the world. And I'm sure you can relate to that. But if you're doing the course with us, we did lessons, I think, through 66 last time. We're up to lesson 67. We're going to look at lessons 67 through, I believe, 73. Yes, 73. Let's see. No, 75. So we are going to look at today lessons 67 through 75. Okay, let's read them a little bit, and we're going to, it corresponds with the second half of chapter 7 that we're going to be looking at today. We're going to be looking at sections 7 through 11 of chapter 7, the kingdom. The gifts of the kingdom. Chapter 7 is the gifts of the kingdom. So, lesson 67 is, love created me like itself. Couldn't be any other way, right? Couldn't be any other way. If you're the child of God, God created you like Him. Apples create apple trees. So we're just like God. Holiness created me holy is the prayer here. Holiness created me holy. Kindness created me kind. Helpfulness created me helpful. And perfection created me perfect. So take that in. Try to believe that any aspect of God, any characteristic of God that you can think of, beautiful, peaceful, all knowledge, omnipresent, any aspect that we can say of God, we can say of ourselves. We can claim those attributes ourselves. Lesson 68 is love holds no grievances, which is a clue to the song I'm going to play a little bit later. Love holds no grievances. Makes perfect sense, right? I call that idea, because of my own experience, the way I sensually feel, the way I bodily feel it, is grandmother's love. Maybe you've had an aunt or a grandmother, maybe it was your father, or maybe an uncle or a coach or something that actually saw you for who you were. And there wasn't anything that you couldn't get on their bad side. I mean, maybe you could disappoint them, but they never, ever, ever stopped loving you. It's like the idea that the grandmother sees her son on death, her grandson on death row. She still loves this little boy. She still loves this man. She still loves this person who is in jail for doing this thing. But she never, ever, ever gives up. She never sees him as anything other than the loving presence that she knows is there. And I kind of call that grandma love. Maybe there's a smell even associated with that. Maybe it's apple pie, or maybe it's bread for my, so it was pie. It's pie from my grandmother. She's a really good pie maker. But so think about how we experience those things. The idea that love holds no grievances. And the prayer here is, I would see you as my friend, and I may remember you as a part of me, and that I may come to know myself. Love holds no grievances. When I let all grievances go, I will know I am perfectly safe. Love holds no grievances. Let me not betray myself. Love holds no grievances. I would wake to myself by laying down all my grievances aside and awakening in Him. Awakening to ourselves, our authentic, fully powerful, innocent selves. Lesson 69 is my grievances. And who doesn't have grievances? We are human beings after all. My grievances hide the light of the world in me. It hides my light. My grievances hide my light. That song, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Yeah, this little light of mine. So grievances block that light. Grievances would be the bush that we hide it under. My grievances hide the light of the world in me. I cannot see what I have hidden. Yet I want to let it be revealed to me for my salvation and the salvation of the world. If I hold this grievances, the light of the world will be hidden from me. And lesson 7 is my salvation comes from me. And this is where this is kind of like becomes not a sort of like fundamentalist Christian idea. Salvation comes from me because it's a decision I make, right? My salvation comes from me. It cannot come from anywhere else. If I'm the light of the world, right? We found that I'm the light of the world, so my salvation comes from me. My salvation cannot come from any other thing. My salvation comes from me and only from me. God's plan for salvation will work, is lesson 71. It'll work. My acceptance of myself, my true nature, who I am, what I'm here to do, that is how I'm saved. I'm saving you, I'm saving the world by letting you, the world, things be as they are, be what they are. Even if I don't particularly understand them or I've assigned them a different meaning, that's the grievance. The grievance is wanting the world, myself, maybe my loved ones, to be something that they're not, in order that I can feel a certain way or don't feel a certain way, probably is more like it. What would you have me do? This is the prayer. What would you have me do? Where would you have me go? What would you have me say? And to whom? Holding grievances is the opposite of God's plan for salvation, and only His plan will work. And I want something that works. Like the introduction says, just try these ideas and you'll prove that they're true. I want something that will work. So I am on a mission to apply these ideas in my life because I want to be happy, I want to be joyful, I want to be free, I want to experience the love of God in my body and be able to give it away in the overflowing and in my effusion, in my overflowing nature of the love that's in me, and share that presence with you and the world. Wherever I go, whatever I do, I am sharing my love with you. Just what we do, and we naturally do this. Lesson 72 is holding grievances. It is an attack on God's plan for salvation. Right, when we're holding grievances, we have to understand it's kind of an act of violence. Not kind of an act of violence, it is an act of violence. Now, we'll get a little bit farther in that in the future. The meaning, the course goes into this a lot more extensively. So hold on to your associations with grievances and violence here. Just know that that's there to look at maybe a little bit later. Put it on a shelf maybe. What is salvation, Father? I do not know. Tell me that I may understand. Holding grievances is an attack on God's plan for salvation. Let me accept God's plan for salvation instead. What is salvation, Father? The Holy Spirit does know who we are, and being able to accept ourselves as we are is a real gift, and it's a gift to the world. It gives the Buddha, there's a quote from the Buddha that comes to mind. He says, when you live without fear, living without fear is the greatest gift you can give somebody else, because it gives them permission to be without fear. You can put a lot of things there in that place of fear. Being love, being the presence of love, I give permission to people to love. Being the presence of peace, I give peace a chance. You know, we can all do those things. All aspects of God are interchangeable like that, which just makes them efficable, provable. They work, right? God's plan for salvation works, and I want something that works. So, lesson 73, the last one we'll do today, is corresponds to lesson 60, goes back to lesson 61. As we build on these ideas, it says, I will there be light. Boom. Love that. Boom. I will there be light. I will there be light. Why? That helps me get rid of those grievances, right? Those grievances I had. So if I'm holding grievances, that's actually not my will. My will is to be the full presence, to be myself, to be this child of God, to be the person I know I am, the person I know God sees, the Holy Spirit is in my heart. I will there be light, it says. Let me behold the light that reflects God's will and mine. I will there be light. Darkness is not my will. See, we've got a negative statement there. We deny what is not true. So there you have it. We're going to be looking. So we just did lesson 67, or the idea behind the lesson 67 through 73, and we're going to look at the second half of chapter 7, the gifts of the kingdom. And the chapter 7, the gifts of the kingdom, starts on page 112 of the book, the back of the front of the book. And the sections are: the last step, the law of the kingdom, the reality of the kingdom, healing as the recognition of truth, healing and the changeless mind, and from vigilance to peace. We did that last week, so if you missed that, you might want to go look at the videos before this one as we move into the second half of chapter 7. The second half of chapter 7 begins in section 7, the totality of the kingdom. The unbelievable belief is section 8. Section 9 is the extension of the kingdom. The extension of the kingdom. The section 10 of chapter 7 is the confusion of pain and joy, and I'm looking forward to sharing that with you because it's really good. And the last section 11 is the state of grace. The state of grace. One of the first, not the first maybe, but it's a beautiful passage about who we are and where this kingdom actually exists, and the feeling senses and the structure and the relationships with God and others we have in this state of grace. So let's get to it, shall we? We're halfway done, and we're halfway done with the program, and we want to make sure we get all of this in. The first section is called we're going to look at today is section 7. It's called the totality of the kingdom, and it begins on page 127. Illusions are investments. Don't you love that? How are you investing your mind? How are you investing your thoughts? Do you think about your thoughts as an investment in the future? Illusions are investments, it says. They will last as long as you value them. Values are relative, but they are powerful because they are mental judgments. Do you see the judgments and grievances are coming in here? But the only way to dispel illusions, is to withdraw your investment in them. You knew that, right? Is to withdraw your investment in them, and they will have no life because you will have put them out of your mind. While you include illusions, you're giving life to them. Except there is nothing there to receive your gift, like a stone idol. There's no actual God in there to receive your gifts. She returns to this idea later, but knowing with the uselessness of ego ideas, but the uselessness of being anything other of investing in illusions. That's how we create suffering. And you are the will of God. You are the will of God is the second paragraph I've chosen to highlight here. You are the will of God. It says, do not accept anything else as your will, or you are denying what you are. Deny this and you will attack, believing you have been attacked. Remember that grievances is an attack? Have no grievances. Lose the judgment. We don't always know what we're looking at. But see the love of God in you, and you will see it everywhere because it is everywhere. See his abundance in everyone, and you will know that you are in him, God, and with him. They are a part of you, the sonship, us. They are a part of you as you are a part of God, brothers and sisters. all living things. You are as lonely without understanding this as God himself is lonely when his sons do not know him. The peace of God is understanding this. The peace of God is understanding that you've cut yourself off from the totality of the kingdom. Peace is knowing that the kingdom is whole and you're a part of it. This is the only way out of the world's thinking of being you're an individual, you have to do everything yourself, there's competition, and you have to do something and you're not enough, and on and on and on and on and on, right? There is one way out of the world's thinking, just as there's only one way into it, and that's believing, investing in these ideas, right? And investing in these illusions. Understand totally by understanding totality, understanding wholeness, understanding your place is a part of the wholeness, a necessary part as well. The next section, section 8, is called the unbelievable belief. You think you have unbelievable beliefs? What does unbelievable mean? Well, kind of means that it's so wild that, it's like, I don't know, what would be an unbelievable idea? I know I'd love to believe in dragons. I don't know that, I don't think that there are dragons on the earth, but that would kind of be for me an unbelievable idea. If somebody came to me and said, I raise dragons, I would say I would not believe them. That would be like an unbelievable idea. Beautiful, but an unbelievable idea. Do you have ideas that are unbelievable? The Course says you might. The unbelievable idea. What's that? I love this. Do not be afraid of the ego. You kind of knew where I was going with that, didn't you? The ego is the unbelievable idea. The unbelievable idea is your ego. Do not be afraid of the ego. And it depends on your mind, and as you made it by believing in it. Remember the illusions that we invest in? Remember that? That's kind of like that is the ego. Illusions we invest in. Do not be afraid of the ego. It depends on your mind. And as you made it by believing it, so you can dispel it by withdrawing belief in it. That same idea again. Withdrawing your belief, withdrawing your attention to it, withdrawing your focus. We learned last week that your mind is very powerful, right? So what you focus on increases and becomes a greater thing, has more power, and you're investing your life in it. Well, are we doing it to unbelievable ideas? Are we giving unbelievable ideas a chance at trying to make them exist? They will never exist. They will never be true. But it's our investment in them that causes us to suffer. Do you see that? Are you beginning to see the connection there? Withdraw your belief in it. Do not project the responsibility for your belief in it onto anyone else, and you will preserve the belief. No one else is doing this. It's you. Well, they're hurting me. They believe in the ego, therefore their ego is like hurting me. No. Their ego is just as illusory as yours, and you do not have to invest in their ego either. When you are willing to accept the sole responsibility, when you are willing to accept sole responsibility for the ego's existence, you will have laid aside all anger and attack and grievances, right? Because they come from an attempt to project your responsibility for your own errors. But who does that? Reject responsibility for your own errors. But having accepted the errors as yours, do not keep them. Give them quickly over to the Holy Spirit to be undone completely. What a great promise. Your errors can be undone so that all their effects will vanish from your mind and from the sonship as a whole. When we make mistakes, and we will, when we hold grievances, and we will, the Holy Spirit is saying, if we give over those errors of judgment, when we try to invest in an illusion to try to make it true, when we do those things, we are actually attacking. So we can realize that for ourselves and turn that over to the Holy Spirit. Say, oh wow, that was out of integrity, or wow, that ended up not being a good thing, or wow, I that's not me, or that's not love. I was, afraid, or trying to make something true that's not true. You can give it over to the Holy Spirit, and even though maybe the error looks like it's unfixable, good, not only good will come of it, but it'll be the catalyst for greater and greater momentum in your life. When we turn over the mistakes and turn over the lessons and the meaning of what things are to the Holy Spirit. Okay? So it's kind of the idea there with the unbelievable belief, turning over the mistakes we make to the Holy Spirit, and the unbelievable belief, the ego. And the next section is section 9, and that is called the extension of the kingdom. And it is a pretty powerful place, the extension of the kingdom. But before we do that, I'd like to take a minute and introduce the song. This is from Reverend Yolanda's Old Time Gospel Hour. It's a lovely video I've prepared to you because I have the luxury of doing a pre-record this week, and I'll have another one for you next week. But we're going to do a little bit of a pre-record here and show you a bit of the show from Reverend Yolanda's Old Time Gospel Hour. It's a song he's going to be putting on to his next release, Reverend Yolanda's Country Gospel Kirtan Volume 2, Step Back, and this is the song called Let Go of Grievances. Kenneth Gartman on the piano, singing and carrying on. Well, actually, Kenneth Gartman isn't on the piano. Kenneth Gartman is singing and doing some hand motions, and it's very funny. I hope you enjoy it. This is Letting Go of Grievances.
Miracles will come to me when I forgive the world. When I forgive the world. Hello. Miracles will come to me. Miracles will come to me when I forgive the world. When I forgive the world. When I let go of grievances. Just a little bit of willingness to accept forgiveness, and we are free. All right. Let go of grievances. Just a little bit of willingness.
This is what has become so important to me today. It's not about separating ourselves out into these little groups. I'm a heterosexual, or I'm this, or I'm that, or I'm gay, or I'm bi, or whatever it is, or radical fair, or whatever it is. It's not about that, really. It's about embracing the larger thing that we make as a whole, that we make together. And if we're so busy separating ourselves out into all these little subgroups, a lot of times that causes and it's an antagonistic sort of relationship. But if you're just understanding that your uniqueness is a part of the whole, and your intention is to bond with the whole, then that shifts things.
Let go of grievances, just a little bit of willingness to accept forgiveness, and we are free. Let go of grievances, just a little bit of willingness to accept forgiveness, and we are free. One last time. Let go of grievances, just a little bit of willingness to accept forgiveness. We are free. Yeah. We are free.
And welcome back. Welcome back. Letting go of grievances is what we're talking about today, because as we've learned, letting go of grievances helps us to be aware of, or actually allows the flow of Holy Spirit, allows our passions to be manifest into the world and us to expand the love of God in the world. So grievances block the light of God in us. Remember that from the lessons? Grievances are an attack on God's will. They attack God's will because they're saying, it shouldn't be that way and I'm mad. So the letting go of grievances and forgiveness is the way that we are free. Free to be ourselves, free to be whole and complete, free to be me. Right? Here we are. We're at the second half of section of chapter 7. We've looked at section 7 of chapter 7 is where we began today, and we've looked at the totality of the kingdom, meaning and reminding us that we invest in the world that we believe in, that we invest in and pay attention to what we want to manifest, and that's the way it always is. This has been a really big topic in the New Age idea, but the only illusions that persists are ones in which we believe in, the ones in which we focus on, and the way we let go of illusions is to stop investing in them, which leads us to the notion that your will and God's will are the same thing. That you are the will of God, that idea that you are the will of God. And then we moved on to section 8, which is the unbelievable belief. And the unbelievable belief is that you're an ego, that your ego is you, that you are a mind trapped in a body, that Descartian, the Cartesian view of the world, materialism, scientific materialism, that you are only what you can see and what you can measure. The unbelievable belief is that the ego's right, and that the ego actually exists and has a motive and is not you. And so that is the unbelievable belief. But it says that we can really kind of unhook that idea, unhook that habit, if we realize that we're afraid of the ego. And the ego isn't actually a thing, it's a collection of ideas, of separation, of our animal, of kind of a lower animal nature. It's not a problem, but we need to be able to consciously know what's going on, which is why we need to turn our abilities over to the Holy Spirit so that she can teach us how to perfect them in our own bodies, in a present, aware, three-dimensional person that has a body that is learning through this body. So do not be afraid of the ego, and the way we get kind of a handle on what the ego is we stop investing in the fear. The ego lives by fear. Don't be afraid of the ego. There is nothing to be afraid of. Like they say, there's no man, look, the man behind the curtain, just like this, it's you. The man behind the curtain is you. That's the idea again, because we're looking at chapter 7, the gifts of the kingdom. What are the gifts of the kingdom? You. This gift that is you, this gift that is your being and your awareness and your consciousness and your place in the mind of God and your place in this web of relationships that's God. Of course, God is much more than that, and saying it and using it in languages doesn't come up to that level, but we are not two things. That's the non-dualism I spoke of earlier. God and us aren't two things. There aren't two things. There isn't an ego and an us. There isn't a devil and a Jesus fighting it out, arm wrestling for your soul. That idea is one that the Course in Miracles asks you to let go of and turn over your mind and your ideas and the meaning, because we did that like in the first lesson. I don't know what anything is for. This table doesn't mean anything. That's goes back to the very beginning idea. The gifts of the kingdom is our ability to be ourselves, the ability to be who God is, to practice our will on this planet. God's will and our will are the same thing after all. And so then we went on to talk about, so here we are at the extension of the ego, the extension of the kingdom, and we were talking about here the extension of God being of this is the Spirit's only function. The kingdom is forever because it is in the mind of God. This is so we are fully appreciated, and we extend that out into the world. The extension of the kingdom is the extension of ourselves into loving relationships. And then we talked about in the confusion of pain and joy. Remember the confusion of pain and joy? We are at 9, the extension of the kingdom. And it says, the extension of God's being is Spirit's only function. Its fullness can be contained any more than its fullness of its Creator. And the fullness is creation. The fullness is creation. This idea of being whole and complete. I want us to understand that in section 9, coming back to section 9, the extension of the kingdom. The extension of God's being is Spirit's only function. We talk about putting our passions out into the world. Its fullness cannot be contained any more than can the fullness of the Creator. Fullness is extension. The ego's whole thought system blocks extension and thus blocks your only function. Remember that about grievances? Your ego is the one that's in the grievance, not you. It therefore blocks your joy so that you perceive yourself as unfulfilled. So when you perceive yourself as unfulfilled, know that you are perceiving, have run across a block to joy. And in the very beginning of the Course in Miracles, it says that I cannot teach you what love is, but I can show you the blocks to your awareness of love as your inheritance. So this idea of us being love, of us being joy, and when we aren't experiencing joy, we have discovered a block to our extension, a block to the extension of the kingdom, a place where we are damming off the flow of God into the world. And I, for one, love it when I find that kind of stuff. It's I look for ways in which I get my feelings hurt. I look for ways in which I'm out of integrity. I look for the mistakes of ignorance that I make as a human being to extend and to be myself. I'm constantly learning and listening to the Holy Spirit for ways in which I can be a more loving, fully present human being. And I think that's what the Course talks about. And that's what the Course is really good for. It says the Spirit's only function here, the Spirit's only function is to extend the kingdom. And she does that through our loving relationships. She does that through this web of connection that we really are. And when we're not doing that extension, we feel that sense of feeling, we feel unfulfilled. We feel unfulfilled. But God does not know unfulfillment, and therefore you must create. It therefore blocks your joy so that you perceive yourself as unfulfilled. Unless you create, you are unfulfilled. But God does not know unfulfillment, and therefore you must create. Know yourself and accept yourself as a creative human being. You may not know your own creations. You may not even know the relationships, the loving relationships you're in. You may not really even recognize maybe all the relationships that you're in. That's not a block. Not realizing what relationships or what influence you have on other people isn't the block. It's being that present in being willing to extend the love of God to all beings, to all in all of our relationships. So think about the ways in which we have ways in which we can extend or be healthy in our relationships, that we space again, and create structures that allow us to more efficiently get our love into the world, have bodies that are healthy, and create an atmosphere in an environment where that ability to give ourselves away in love and fulfillment and expansion is available, and to think thoughts and to focus on the mind that we share with God. That would be an integral interpretation. The kingdom is forever extending. Yay! The kingdom is forever extending. Well, because you're forever extending. You're limitless, right? The kingdom is forever extending because it is in the mind of God. You do not know your joy because you do not know your own selffulness. Think about that, selffulness. Exclude any part of the kingdom from yourself and you are not whole. That's what we do when we project. Remember, we talked about projection last week. A split mind, that's your belief that your split mind between two kingdoms, right? Your split mind cannot perceive its fullness. It needs the miracle of its wholeness to dawn upon it and heal it. That's the container that we create here on the Course in Miracles in the Mighty Companions, and hopefully you have many groups that create this container for you, in which it dawns on you that you're enough, that you're full, that you're whole and complete and a fully loving individual capable of sharing your love with other people. This reawakens the wholeness of it and restores it to the kingdom because of its acceptance of wholeness. The full appreciation of the mind's selffulness makes selfishness, you knew that was coming, didn't you? Selfishness and self-fullness is the contrast in the polarities here. Selfishness impossible, and extension, these loving relationships, inevitable. We do loving relationships naturally. That is why there is a perfect peace in the kingdom in this moment. Spirit is fulfilling its function, and only complete fulfillment is peace. And many of us have experienced a lot of peace, rather a lot of peace. And when that happens, put this in your mind and connect these two ideas in your mind about fullness and peace, about wholeness and peace. When we reject any part of our wholeness, when we reject any part of the kingdom, and that means any part. That doesn't mean just the pretty parts or the parts that we prefer or find aesthetically pleasing or completely understand even. It means if we reject any part of the kingdom, we take fullness and wholeness out of our ability. And in fullness and wholeness is how we create and how we extend our love in the world, and we experience that as peace. The 10th section here, and we only have 11, so we're almost done. It's called the confusion of pain and joy, and this is what I was so excited about talking to you about. Kind of got ahead of myself there. The confusion of pain and joy. Have you ever looked back on something and thought it was the most painful thing in the world, but it ended up being a good idea? Or ended up being something that was really helpful? One of the examples I've used in the past is that if you're waiting on a subway platform, I live in New York, so I'm going to use the subway metaphor. If you're waiting for a train on a subway platform, and someone comes running down the platform and tackles you and smothers you with kisses, and you look up and you go, oh my God, it's my long lost friend. Oh my God, she's here, and we're gonna, we can ride off into the sunset together and it'll be lovely. And she's smothering you with kisses, and you're ecstatic and this is joyful. But same situation. Somebody runs down the platform, tackles you and smothers you with kisses, and it's nobody that you know. It's the homeless guy that you saw like 2 platforms down, and he's been stalking and following you. You have a stalker in it, somebody who's completely obsessed with you. So this homeless guy is like tackled you, and that you might have a different reaction. You might not want to run off into the subway or run off into the sunset with this homeless guy. Maybe you might, but contrast the idea of the exact same thing is happening, but our understanding of it and our reaction to it is completely different. With that in mind, listen to what she says. The Holy Spirit will direct you only so as to avoid pain. Yay. Only to avoid pain. Surely no one would object to this goal if he recognized it. The problem is not whether what the Holy Spirit says is true, but whether you want to listen to what it says. And here I am trying to listen to what the Holy Spirit says. The problem is not whether what the Holy Spirit says is true, but whether you want to listen to what the Holy Spirit says. You no more recognize what is painful than you know what is joyful, and are, in fact, very apt to confuse the two. The Holy Spirit's main function is to teach you to tell them apart. Another one of those main functions here. What is joyful to you is painful to the ego. And as long as you are in doubt about what you are, you will be confused about joy and pain. The confusion is the cause of the whole idea of sacrifice. Obey the Holy Spirit and you will be giving up the ego. That's why it's they call it ego deflating or puncturing your ego. But you will be sacrificing nothing. On the contrary, you will be gaining everything, because you'll be gaining yourself and the truth, right? If you believed this, there would be no conflict and no need to attack, and grievances would go away, or you'd completely understand them and not be fooled by them. Do you want to gain everything? Do you want to know what to do next? Do you want to lose that anxiety? Do you want to lose your enemies? Then you'll have to listen to the Holy Spirit. Then you'll have to listen and believe that when you experience pain, you're really listening to the ego. The last section is called the State of Grace, and I want to be very clear about this. I'm going to read it to you. It's beautiful. I think it's beautiful. But take this in. Take a big breath, because we're going to complete chapter 7 today, in here in the next few minutes. But just listen to this. This is the Course in Miracles, the State of Grace, section 11 from chapter 7, Gifts of the Kingdom. Grace is the natural state of every son of God. When he is not in a state of grace, he is out of his natural environment and does not function well. Everything he does becomes a strain, because he was not created for the environment that he has made. He therefore cannot adapt to it, nor can it adapt to him. There is no point in trying. A son of God is happy only when he knows he is with God. That is the only environment in which he will not experience strain, because where that is where he belongs. It is also the only environment that is worthy of him, because his own worth is beyond anything that he can make. When a mind has only light, it knows only light. Its own radiance shines all around it and extends out into the darkness of other minds, transforming them into majesty. The majesty of God is there for you to recognize and appreciate and know. Recognizing the majesty of God as your brother is to accept your own inheritance. God gives only equally. If you recognize his gift in anyone, you have acknowledged what he has given you. Nothing is so easy to recognize as truth. This is the recognition that it is immediate, clear, and natural. You have trained yourself not to recognize it. And this has been very difficult for you. Grace is here, and it's here for you all the time. So is the Holy Spirit. Take a moment and carry this idea with you that you are fully whole and complete, that you're part of this wonderful connection that we call God, and that you're here with me, and that I am very grateful for you. That's chapter 7. Join me every week, and we'll look at another section and go over these beautiful spiritual laws. My name is Reverend Glenn Morton Ganaway, and I'm an integral mentor, and you've been listening to The Mighty Companions on the Tau Fellowship live stream. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great week.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to The Mighty Companions. I'm Reverend Yolanda, singer, songwriter, drag queen, and interfaith minister.
And I'm your host, Reverend Glenn Morton Ganaway, integral mentor.
And together we are
Mighty Companions Ministries,
an edutainment ministry whose purpose is to co-create community that inspires us all to live the calling of Spirit.
With A Course in Miracles as the primary guide, we co-create worship, entertainment, gatherings, lectures, and workshops.
You can find us on the web at www.themightycompanions.com.
And every other Saturday here on Livestream and the Tau Fellowship. We are so happy that you are here.